There's a lot of missed opportunities in the Vampire Diaries. Seeing this is a show that lasted for 8 seasons with a lot of characters. And like I said in other videos, the character work on the Vampire Diaries is quite shabby. Especially in the later seasons, it took a massive nosedive. And I believe there are times in which there were opportunities to flesh out certain characters if they would have made some changes. Now some of these missed opportunities are things that you probably would have already heard of. Some of them are just simply my opinions only. But as always, feel free to let me know about opportunities in the Vampire Diaries that you think could have been used to improve the characters greatly that was entirely missed. I've talked about this in Bonnie's video when I was talking about her relationships. And in that video I said that Bonnie's relationships were all mostly terrible. Except for Enzo at the end. And even with Enzo's storyline, it wasn't particularly that fleshed out. Like, it wasn't a great storyline. I believe season 4 was a standout season for Bonnie, obviously before season 6. Simply because they actually cared about writing Bonnie as a character. Not just as a plot device that just shows up simply to save her friends. Because in season 4 they gave her a power up not just to save her friends, but to make her feel confident in herself. Because that's something that Bonnie's been lacking, that's part of her character. Bonnie's self-esteem is very low, especially when it comes to her magic. She constantly puts herself down simply because she believes that she is far weaker than she actually was. But people will constantly remind her that, hey, you are a lot more powerful than you actually believe you are. One of these people was Klaus, although he was doing it for his own benefit, but he was doing it. Which is why I believe that the entirety of Bonnie's storyline in season 4 should have been changed drastically simply by removing one aspect, Shane, and replacing Shane with Klaus, continuing something that's already been happening since season 3. Shane giving Bonnie self-confidence is something that Klaus has already been doing from season 3. And this will not only help Bonnie, but it would also help Klaus because it would actually give Klaus something to be doing, which will make him very important into the main storyline. Because in season 4, he was kind of just there. Although just because of Joseph Morgan's acting, and the fact that Klaus as a character is a powerhouse, it kind of still made it seem like he was a major character, even though he really wasn't. But the storyline would establish him as a main character. Still a villain like season 3, but not really a villain. The main villain would still be Silas. I believe the storyline should have been Klaus seeking a more powerful version of immortality, and he just assumed that Silas was the one that actually casted the immortality spell, so he would have to get it directly from him. And then Klaus would basically just take Shane's storyline for the entirety of season 4, until obviously the storyline that leads to the originals actually happen. And this would have benefited Bonnie's character a lot simply because 1, Klaus's presence is literally that great, and 2, Klaus as a character is, well, that great. Every storyline that Klaus is in is almost always fantastic, meaning that this will turn a storyline of just Bonnie getting her self-confidence into a storyline of self-confidence, manipulation, backstabbing, and unlikely alliances. And in fact, I'll go one step further. This is a continuation of the first one, and it really fleshes out the character of Bonnie and also of Klaus. Way more than Klaus and Caroline did, because they attempted to actually use Caroline as a way to change Klaus as a being, but it just couldn't work simply because it makes no sense for these two people to actually have a romantic thing within each other. There is no way that Caroline should love somebody like Klaus. Yes, Caroline sees the good in people, but knowing that person is still actively doing messed up things. Especially not to the point in which she would actually fall in love with them. That's not Caroline. Especially not the Caroline after season 2. After she became a vampire. Yes, Caroline got with Tyler, who was messed up in season 1. But that's simply because Tyler was changing as a person because of Caroline. But with Klaus and Caroline, they still require Klaus to still be a villain. Meaning that Klaus will still be doing messed up things while still claiming to love Caroline. While still being with Caroline. Which will be dragging Caroline's character down a lot. Which is the thing that I hate in romantic storylines, specifically in the Vampire Diaries. Mainly because a lot of the time it doesn't achieve anything, and it tends to butcher either one or both characters. Which is why I believe that the person that Klaus should have actually had a relationship with should have been Bonnie. Not just because I want Bonnie to have a relationship that actually makes sense, that greatly improves her as a character, but also because it makes sense. Out of all of the main characters that happen to be a girl, Bonnie's the one that makes the most sense to end up with Klaus. And this is simply because out of the friendship group between Bonnie, Caroline, and Elena, Bonnie is the only person that isn't morally good. In terms of morality, Bonnie is as grey as they come. If Bonnie deems what you're doing as a threat to her friends and you constantly being a threat, an active threat, Bonnie will decide to end you. She might change her mind eventually if people convince her not to do something that she really wants to do. But Bonnie will kill you, not just in self-defense, but literally will want you dead. I mean, she tried to kill Damon twice, purposefully. In season 1, she lied to her friends that she destroyed the Gilbert device, which she didn't, for the sole purpose of getting rid of all of the vampires, including Damon. And if Stefan didn't go in to save Damon, she would have probably killed Damon that day. The only reason why Damon survived is simply because Stefan was also on the fire, so Bonnie stopped the fire. Well, at least created a path for them to escape. Bonnie would have killed Damon there and then. And then in season 2, she tried to kill him again, simply because he blamed him for everything that happened to Caroline. Bonnie was going to burn Damon alive in front of Stefan and Elena.
Don't make me fight you, Elena. I'm stronger than you, and I don't want to hurt you. Who's gonna get hurt? Not bad. Not technically good, but then again, Alark didn't train you. You're probably too busy butting into people's business. Just stop! This isn't you, and you know it! You hurt my mom, Elena. How far are you gonna take this?
Bonnie, stop.
Damon, help me.
Bonnie, you're killing her.
I know what I'm doing.
That's the magic talking. This is your best friend.
Damn it, Bonnie.
Bonnie, please.
So when I say that if Klaus is drawn to Bonnie or Bonnie is drawn to Klaus, it would actually make a lot more sense than it would with Caroline, simply because neither character will be ruined, I am not exaggerating. Bonnie's been seeking self-confidence since we've actually met her. She's been searching for witches that can help her grow in her power because she wants more power. However, not only does she not believe that she can actually achieve more power, she also believes that she isn't skilled enough to actually handle that much power. And then in steps Klaus with his charming accent, who reminds her that she's more powerful than she lets on. In fact, she can achieve a lot more things if she stops doubting herself. I think this only happened like 1 or 2 seasons, and I believe this is something that should have happened all throughout season 3. Simply because it would have made Bonnie a far better written character, and would have actually explored the self-esteem aspect of Bonnie's character a lot more, instead of just leaving it till season 4 and then holding it back all the way up until season 6. That should have been Bonnie and Klaus' storyline throughout season 3, and also all the way throughout season 4. And in season 3 would have created a lot more conflict if Klaus continues to do the thing that he was doing when he was with Caroline, in which Klaus will continue to do the things that he was doing in season 3, which would mean that the Mr. Forbes group will want to kill him, which will put Bonnie in a bit of a bind. Although Bonnie had feelings for Klaus, she also believes that she needs to protect her friends. And if Bonnie picks her happiness over her friends, it wouldn't be far-fetched because Bonnie doesn't want to be alone, and Bonnie is the only one that's alone. All of her friends have someone in their life, except for Bonnie. Because in the scenario, Jeremy and Bonnie's relationship didn't exist at all because it sucked. I mean, to be honest, in that season, Jeremy made out of a ghost, a dead woman. So it will make a lot more sense. That is a proper conflict. Instead of Caroline, who in that situation wouldn't have conflict on whether or not she would align with Klaus or align with her friends. Because based on her character, she would align with her friends. Meaning the conflict wouldn't exist at all. Simply because we know exactly what Caroline would do. And if she does anything else, it will be against her character. If Bonnie aligns with her friends, it makes sense for her character. If Bonnie tries to convince her friends not to kill Klaus, it makes sense for her character. Bonnie isn't a morally good person. Bonnie would do what is necessary to be done. But the relationship and the conflict between Bonnie, Klaus and her friends all leads up to one thing. Now, the main reason for this is that Hayley as a character isn't super necessary. Now, I'm not saying that if you delete Hayley, nothing will happen. Obviously, that makes no sense. Seeing as Hayley giving birth to Hope is the main purpose of the entirety of the originals. What I'm saying is, that role could have been given to any character that is morally grey, both in the Vampire Diaries and the originals. Like, they specifically only created Hayley for the sole purpose of getting pregnant with Klaus's child. That was quite simply her storyline in season 4. And her entire storyline is just Elijah and also how exactly her and Klaus agree or disagree with how to raise Hope. And Klaus and Hayley didn't really have a romantic thing, they just had a one-night stand and that was it. So creating a new character for that whole purpose is simply unnecessary, simply because you already have an existing character with her own storyline and also a relationship with Klaus. Instead of creating a new character and have to create a whole new relationship, a relationship that doesn't particularly go far anyways, why not flesh out Bonnie's character from season 3? Keep Caroline the way that she was, because Caroline and Tyler were perfectly fine. They were probably the most healthy relationship before Klaus showed up. They were really well written until, well, Klaus was added to the mix, which made the relationship way worse and unnecessary, which clearly ruined Caroline's character to the point in which Caroline was doing things that she would never do. Why not actually allow it to be somebody that would do the things that Caroline actually did, and have that storyline be fleshed out throughout season 3, through season 4, and throughout the originals? And this is mainly because it would have benefited Bonnie's character a lot. It obviously really wouldn't affect Klaus's character at all, really, because the character growth of Klaus was already fantastic, so nothing would really change. And it would have made Bonnie's character far better written if she was in the originals than if she was in the Vampire Diaries. With regards to character writing, the originals gap the Vampire Diaries, like, by far. They are way better. The writers, they are way better than the writers in the Vampire Diaries. They actually care about the individual characters. They believe that the characters shape the storyline, not the storyline shaping the character. Which is why there's not a lot of character inconsistencies than there were in the Vampire Diaries. Every single character that was a main character was very much fleshed out, and I believe that Bonnie, if she would have went to the originals, would have been a fantastic character, because she would have been a main character, like what Hayley was.
Nothing's happening.
What's wrong? I don't know. This has never happened before.
Bonnie, what are you doing? Let me pass through. Why won't you let me pass through?
I don't control it.
What?
It's not up to me.
Then who is it up to?
I can't help you, Catherine.
No, 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 no!
Switching over from Bonnie fanfic, Cade as a character should have been a much more bigger threat than he actually was. As in, Cade should have existed a lot longer than he did. And I'm not saying that he should have went all the way to the end of the show, as in should have been on the very last episode. Even if they killed him off at the exact time that they did, it wouldn't really change, because what I'm suggesting is that Cade should have been a character, as in an existing character, from season 5. From the very first introduction of the concept of hell, or at least the dimension that is in the other side, peace, or limbo. From the very moment that Catherine was unable to pass through Bonnie and was dragged away to hell, we should have been introduced to the concept of the ruler of hell, Cade. Although we shouldn't have known exactly who he was, but we should know that he existed. And I think in that scene, they should have showed him somewhat like a shadowy figure, or like a ghost-like being. And Bonnie should have been able to see him, but not see him all the way to full on know exactly who he was. I believe Bonnie should have known about it, and also tell her friends about it. And I believe we should have been an overarching villain from season 5, all the way to when he showed up in season 8. It should have been a situation in which he was one that manipulated Silas to wanting to destroy the other side. And then when Silas failed, he turned his head to Marcos, who succeeded in what Silas failed to do, as Marcos was the reason why the other side became unstable, and the reason why he was ultimately destroyed. And the reason why he wants that is simply because he can't access the source on the other side, so he needs the dimension to be destroyed so that he can grab the source from the other side and harvest them. And it should have been an overarching villain that continues to manipulate the storyline for his own gain. Just like with Bonnie, Stefan was just violated throughout the entire show, like, greatly. Stefan had one standout season, and the crazy thing about it is that everyone understands exactly why it was a standout season for Stefan. And this is simply because Stefan was allowed to be a character outside of a relationship. Every other season, Stefan was defined by whatever relationship that he was in. All of his storyline was specifically about the relationships that he was in. It was just Elena this, Elena that, love triangle this, love triangle that, Damon this, Damon that, Damon and Elena's doing this. And then it became Caroline, and then a terrible love triangle between Caroline, Alaric, and Stefan, and then back to Caroline again, and then he just died. And that was literally Stefan, just a mopey, whiny mess. From season 1 to season 3, he was still a somewhat individual character, with his own motivations as an individual. However, once season 3 hit, Stefan became cool. You actually started seeing Stefan as an interesting character. It's to the point in which you're a lot more concerned about what Stefan is doing than what any other character is doing. Simply because the only interesting storyline is quite simply Stefan's storyline. For a majority of the entire season, Stefan was morally complex. Stefan was a deep character. However, that was only for half of season 3. Once his whole charade with Klaus ended, that was it for Stefan, because for some reason, Stefan was drawn back to Elena, because the writers believe that Stefan cannot be a character outside of a relationship. And the sole reason why they brought him back is simply to fuel a love triangle between him, Damon, and Elena, which was unnecessary because we already know exactly who they were going to pick. My only issue with that is the fact that they had to change Stefan's entire being from what he was from the first half of season 3 to what he was in the second half and all throughout the rest of the show. The Stefan that was interesting, the Stefan that you want to see on screen, the Stefan that was morally complex, the Stefan that was well written, just died the very moment that he went back to Elena. And it turned out to be very pointless. So what was the point of changing his character? Don't change Stefan into being a good person. Continue making him morally grey. Make him believe that if certain things needs to be done, then it needs to be done. It shouldn't be up to Damon to do it. I mean, it's been alluded to by Damon since season 1 that Stefan would do the things that he does if he starts being concerned about how people view him to always be righteous. So again, they really should have just continued making Stefan the way that he was at the start of season 3. Because that would have made him more interesting and a far better written character. In fact, I don't believe Stefan should have been in any other relationship with anyone after Elena. Especially not immediately after Elena. Now, Elena as a person, I don't really mind the fact that she changed over time, specifically after she became a vampire. My main issue is the fact that nobody calls her out on it, to the point in which it doesn't feel like it is something that is confirmed that she actually changed. Like when she does things, nobody reacts, nobody say anything about it. It's almost like it never happens, no matter how bad it is. She killed thousands of people, nobody cared. Klaus cared for like 10 seconds and then Caroline happened and then boom, Klaus forgot immediately. Was able to live peacefully with the people that killed his brother in front of his face and tried to lie about it immediately. I mean, even Rebecca had an issue with Elena, sure. Rebecca didn't particularly like Elena, of course, sure, but Rebecca didn't really do anything to Elena. Other than disrespecting Elena, of course, but that's not Rebecca. So Klaus didn't do anything after the barrel was dropped. Rebecca didn't do anything either. And Elijah for some reason was mad at Catherine for killing Jeremy, the same Jeremy that killed his brother. But killing Jeremy isn't even the issue, although it kind of made no sense that none of the originals actually reacted to that. But the main issue is the fact that Elena knowingly killed thousands of people and nobody mentioned it ever. Not Caroline, not Bonnie, not Stefan, not Damon, no one. No one in the entire show from that point all the way to the end of the show ever mentioned the fact that Elena convinced her brother to commit genocide. Knowingly, not just because they wanted to get rid of Cole because Cole was a threat to Jeremy, but because they wanted to complete Jeremy's mark immediately. That is insane. Nobody called her out on it. In fact, in that storyline, everyone else was seen as the bad guys. I mean, Stefan didn't dagger Rebecca simply because Rebecca opened up to him, and he now understands exactly why Rebecca, of all people, would want the cure. To the point in which Rebecca probably wants the cure a lot more than anyone there. So Stefan didn't dagger her simply because he believes that she deserves it, but also the fact that it is not necessary. But probably in that scene, Stefan was seen as the bad guy because he spared Rebecca. I mean, to the point in which it was supposed to be seen as a good thing when Damon punched him. And they believe that the reason why he did it is because he fell in love with Rebecca. Why is that an issue? I mean, the only reason why Elena wanted to get rid of Rebecca is simply because Elena thought that Rebecca was a threat. Not in the sense that Rebecca was a threat to kill her because Rebecca didn't particularly care about Elena at that point, but because Rebecca might be an obstacle to getting the cure. Which is the exact same reason why Rebecca hates her in the first place. Even though as far as they knew at that point there's more than one cure, and she could share it, she just doesn't care. She just didn't want Rebecca to be in that situation in which Rebecca might stop her from getting a cure. And she thought the best bet is to get rid of Rebecca and make sure that she doesn't get it. And again, this is something that continued all the way up until season 6. In season 5, she knowingly joins Damon to blow themselves up, even though Damon would have accomplished that by himself just fine without her. She thought it was a great idea to turn that into a date. Knowing full that every single supernatural being that dies has to go through Bonnie. Knowing that it hurts her greatly every single time that happens. But she did it anyways, and again, nobody called her out on it. In season 6, she was actively hunting people. Again, she got a little bit of a scolding from Caroline, and then that's it. She became a junkie and tried to kill Luke, simply because he didn't want to supply her with the herbs that's necessary for her to see an illusion of Damon. Not a spirit version of Damon, just a mental projection. And again, nobody mentions it. Nobody talks about it. In fact, Lou's complaint about it literally lasted for like 1 episode. And these are just some examples. Elena falling into darkness is fine. It is perfectly fine. In fact, it is within her character to do that. My only issue with that is the fact that they want us to view Elena like she's still the same Elena as she was in season 2 and season 3. That is not the same Elena. They're very different. Elena became a lot darker, but nobody addresses the fact that she became a lot darker. To the point in which you have Elena doing Elena things that she was doing before season 4. And then in between that, she would do something really messed up. Everyone forget about it, and then Elena goes back to doing the righteous stuff that she was doing before. Then she turns out to do something messed up. Everyone forgets about it, and then on it goes. I believe if they acknowledge the fact that Elena is becoming a lot more darker consistently, and kept the storyline of her becoming a lot more darker than she was in season 3 or season 2, she would have been a far better written character than what we saw on screen. Simply because she wouldn't be a walking contradiction. Simply because she wouldn't have some ridiculous standards for other people, standards that she doesn't hold herself accountable to. In fact, that would give her relationship with Damon a lot more credibility, because the whole agenda was Elena is changing Damon for the better, when actually it's the complete opposite. Damon is changing Elena for the worse.